Hi, welcome to Keith Explains. Tonight we're going to talk about Blade 2. Blade 2 is a movie. You may have seen the ads for it. They were on TV briefly. Briefly being before Blade 2 actually opened in the theaters, because once Blade 2 opened in the theaters, odds are someone you knew had seen it and had warned you. And so they'd have just been wasting the money on the TV ads, because Blade 2, sequel to the original movie, original movie called Blade, based on a comic book also called Blade, starring a main character named Blade. You get the kind of whole theme to the name of the movie here. If they named the second movie something else, like Vampire Killer Bob, then they would have had to advertise it more, and no one would have still gone to see it, because they'd have heard, hey, Vampire Killer Bob sucked! Because Blade 2 sucked. And at this point, I need to apologize to several members of my crew who I forced to come watch it with me. One of them was explaining earlier, he actually went home after seeing Blade 2 and had a little mind coma moment when he just couldn't think because all the logical processes in his brain had been stopped by the artistic moment that we're going to call Blade 2, which you may have gathered it's about vampires. Blade, kind of half a vampire, played by Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes playing the Wesley Snipes character. They're kind of archetype characters. Wesley Snipes plays Wesley Snipes very well. Kind of like Denzel Washington plays Denzel Washington well. And I guess Neil Simon plays Neil Simon kind of well. And everyone plays themselves well, strangely except me. But anyway, back to Wesley Snipes playing the Blade character. In the original movie, he stalked the world, killing vampires who were killing people. In Blade 2, he's stalking the world, killing vampires who are killing people. At least that's how it opens. It opens somewhere in Eastern Europe. They never mention this, but you can tell it's Eastern Europe because all the letters are backwards, like the K's and the R's, and they have consonants that you've never heard of that make kind of weird noises. But it kind of opens there, and there's Blade 2, and it's in a blood bank, and there's a guy giving blood. Apparently, in Eastern Europe, you can give blood like 7 times a day. Not for long. Maybe for a day or two. But you can do it. And so it opens in a blood bank. Blood banks apparently are run by vampires. I'd always suspected it, with the needles and everything. Although, when I give blood, they're very nice people. And so it's a blood bank, and there's someone there, and they're like, oh, come back here. We want to check something in your blood. Do you have any family? Because, they're gonna kill the guy and take his blood because they're vampires. But the guy they take back, turns out he's a vampire. He's worse than a vampire because he's got this he's evil looking, kind of nasty, in a Mad Max evil looking sort of way. And he kills a bunch of vampires there. Vampires, by the way, apparently love closed circuit television because everything is recorded. It's just like in a 7-Eleven, which I know because I watch these cop shows where they show you the footage from the 7-Elevens, although you never see vampires because of course the media suppresses that. But so after we got the vampires there, then we see Wesley Snipes driving around in a really cool car. Now here's the weird thing. It's the same really cool car that you saw in the first movie, but the first movie was set in America, and the second movie was set in Eastern Europe. And you got to wonder, did Blade have his car shipped to Eastern Europe, or did he just manage to buy a really cool American car there? They never fill this in. Now this is called foreshadowing. See, when the third thing you see doesn't explain anything at all, you should realize this is a movie that's not going to explain anything at all. So Blade, so he finds some vampires and he kills them in really cool ways. The first 5 minutes of killing vampires are kind of cool. They're not as cool as in the first movie when he was killing vampires, because I think the music was better. Kind of a heavy rock beat, and he'd kill vampires on the downbeat, which was really cool because they don't play the music at the place that he's killing vampires. They add that later in the studio. So they cleverly, synchronize things or whatever, but they have big budgets. They can afford to do that in movies. So he's killing vampires, and one of them escapes, and he's trying to find this friend of his. And they play this little thing in case you didn't see the first movie to let you know everything that happened in the first movie. One of these kind of talking out loud about, well, here's the important stuff from the first movie, and here's the background of the character and why he's doing things. And I'm thinking, well, why do you need to explain why people are killing vampires? I mean, people are killing vampires because they're vampires, and it's cool when you kill them because they do this firework thing and they dissolve, and it's neat. But so Blade kills a couple of vampires, and he's apparently trying to find this friend of his named Whistler, which is it's the Chris Christopherson character. Whistler, I could have come up with a better name. It's probably from the comic book. It's probably called Whistler in the comic book, and then later they cast Chris Christopherson, who doesn't look like a whistler at all. But what are you going to do? So he's trying to find him. He's like, where do you have him? Where do you have him? I don't know. Stab, and boof. Keeps doing that, and then eventually, he finds his way into this secret vampire lair, Sector G, or something, where he comes into a room and they have those sharper image bubble and fountain things, except they're full of blood, and there's a guy floating in one of them, kind of like the Borg float in the tubes when the Borg get created in Star Trek, but this one's filled with blood, and it's his buddy in there, and he takes, and he opens the tube, and the blood shoots out everywhere, which is kind of gross. But so he rescues his friend, and then he puts his friend in his trunk. I mean, really, friends should ride in the back seat, not in the trunk. Just a little clue in case any of you don't have friends. If you put your friends in the trunk, that's why you don't have friends. But drives them back to their secret lair. I mean, it's like the Batcave, except it's kind of industrial, steel mill kind of thing. And there we meet, his young apprentice, kind of like a Dick Grayson type, except he's named Scud, and he's really obnoxious. Kind of in a... I'm trying to think how he's obnoxious. Just in a really annoying, new, evil kid kind of way. And, he's like, oh, I don't trust that guy. And he's like, well, he's been a vampire for several years. Because in the first movie, the vampires bit his friend, and then his friend didn't want to be a vampire, so he stuck a silver bullet through his head with a gun. But apparently in a sequel, you can come back from having a silver bullet go through your brain, if they give you enough money. So Blade injects his little friend with the retrovirus that cures vampirism. And I'm thinking, if you have a retrovirus that cures vampirism, why do you keep blowing them up? I mean, wouldn't you just have them come in for shots once a month or something? I mean, it seems it'd be more humane and less messy. But he throws his friend, and his friend is cured of vampirism because the cool retrovirus, he had a chick in the first movie that helped him that invented the retrovirus. Vampirism, by the way, is a viral disease. It doesn't make any sense to me either. So then they're in the evil lair, and then vampires break in trying to kill Blade. You get the idea this happens about every 3 or 4 days. I mean, it probably keeps him, in shape, because vampires come in and try and kill him, and they have this sword fight, and they're shooting at each other, and then suddenly the vampires stop, and they're like, no, wait, we've come to talk to you. And I'm thinking that's really the first sneaky thing that vampires do. They go, we just want to talk to you. And then you go, oh, really? And then they bite you. But these don't bite him. Instead, they're like, oh, we come from the Vampire Council. We want you to help us. And I'm thinking, okay, you don't want to hear we're from the Vampire Council. We want you to help us. I mean, you also don't want to hear we're here to audit you. But this is worse, because auditors can only make this life miserable. Vampires can make all of them miserable. But so apparently, now here's where you really get into the meat of the movie. Apparently there's this new kind of vampire called a Reaver that eats vampires, which is making the vampires kind of annoying because vampires have been used to not being eaten and instead being eaters. So they want Blade, really good vampire killing guy to help them kill the evil vampires so that the world can get back to pretty much vampires against Blade. It's kind of a cheesy plot, but it's the plot nonetheless. So they take Blade to Evil Lair Central, which I guess they never really said it. From the credits, we're guessing it's in Czechoslovakia because all the names in the credits are in Czechoslovakia. But I'm going to say it's in Romania because I think vampires are from Romania, although I could be totally wrong. So they take him to Evil Headquarters. Evil Headquarters supposed to look like a big vampire castle up on a hill. You remember it? I think all the vampire movies had vampire castles on hills, and there was lightning behind them and stuff. No, Evil Headquarters Central here looks like a big cement building in the middle of downtown, which actually makes more sense because that's where Starbucks is, kind of downtown Seattle. So they fly him there in helicopters, and then they march him in. And apparently, vampire headquarters, pretty much like most Navy and Army bases, just have vampires standing at attention everywhere in case people attack. So they march him through, all the vampires standing, and they get to the middle of vampire headquarters. Really nice modern building, plate glass, mirrors, and everything. And then deep in the center of it, they have a drawbridge that kind of opens, and they take him in. They go, here, this is the chief vampire, kind of like Mr. Head Honcho evil vampire dude, who's got to be like 4 million years old because he looks kind of like Yoda but taller, and you can see the veins in his head and stuff. And he's evil vampire numero uno, and he explains to Blade that there are these Reavers and that they need help killing them and blah blah blah. I mean, you're just trying to get back to Blade killing vampires or Blade killing Reavers because that's what you came to the movie for. So Blade's like, oh, fine, I'll help you. And you're thinking, no, just kill the head evil vampire guy. Wouldn't that be a good idea? But no, it's not. So the vampires apparently have a team of evil, we're good at killing other people. Like a SWAT team, except they don't use guns. I mean, I remember seeing SWAT in the early 70s, and they had the cool rifles. Vampires don't need rifles because they're vampires. So they agree they're going to go after the Reavers, and he explains the genetic mutation, and it's really Darwin evolution in action. I mean, to me, the Reavers are now the head life form on the planet, if you want to think of it from a natural selection point of view. But natural selection's evil. That's why we don't teach it in the schools anymore. So we're not going there. So they go back to the steel plant, and they're going to go out and hunt the Reavers, and there's some. Someone on the team. It's like every movie in the Army you ever saw. There's a wise guy on the team, and there's kind of two people on the team that are really good friends, only with each other, and kind of hate everyone else. And then and there's a beautiful vampire girl who is strangely attracted and yet repulsed to Blade. I mean, again, all movies got to have chicks in them. I mentioned that last time. I'm mentioning it again. I don't know why. I mean, seems to me you can have a movie where you're just killing vampires. Chop out that 4 minutes of chick stuff, but whatever. So they go off into the sewers because apparently Reavers live in sewers. I mean, I'm thinking sewers are hard to dig, aren't they? I mean, I don't think ancient cities have really huge sewer systems because someone had to actually physically dig them out. But no, apparently in Czechoslovakia, Romania, whatever, the sewers are bigger than the above ground part and better lit in many cases. Because it's never dark in a sewer. In Romania. I mean, vampires don't like light, but they're down there in the sewers just marching around. You can see all the curves in their faces and everything. So they're going through the sewers trying to find the Reavers, and they go to this vampire party where there's loud disco dancing music again, kind of like a rave. Not we're saying anything about ravers, but apparently ravers and vampires have similar tastes. And then they're down in the sewers and they're chasing Reavers. And apparently there are more Reavers than they thought, and they almost all get killed. But it's kind of cool. They brought some secret weapons. Like they invented these things called flash grenades. They're really just like big flash bulbs. Like, Blade had never thought, hey, light's bad to vampires. What if I had something I could throw that would suddenly be really bright, kill all the vampires nearby? No, he prefers to shoot them with the silver bullets and stab them with his cool sword because it looks better on film. But they kind of get down there and they're killing Reavers, and there's the head evil Reaver dude, because there's always a head evil Reaver dude. I mean, think of every movie you've ever seen a Reaver in. There's always been one evil guy, hasn't there? So they're killing Reavers, and people on their team are getting killed, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, I was there, I watched it all, and trying to remember it now, and no, it's just skip parts of it. Suffice it to say that most of them are killed. And, by the way, the head Reaver dude talks to Whistler. Remember Whistler? He's a friend of his. Yeah. Talks to Whistler and, gives him some secret information about something. And then they go back to, Vampire Central and hey, Reavers, we tried to kill them. There are a lot of them. And then, hey, this is where the people who write in the movie go, hey, now people are going to think that they're killing Reavers, but we're going to twist the plot. Meanwhile, I mean, when the audience have been going, no, come on, get to the plot twist. I mean, this kind of sucks. But so here's the plot twist. Turns out the evil vampires have been playing with Blade. That they know all about the Reavers, and that the Reavers are just a subtle way of getting Blade. Now here's the thing I don't think. They already had Blade. See, they had Blade when he walked into the big castle, remember? I mean, they could have just tapped him with little stun guns right then. Wouldn't have had to do any of this Reaver stuff or nothing. Anyway, so now they tap Blade with a bunch of stun guns. Apparently Blade doesn't like stun guns. Everything else doesn't hurt him, but you get a cattle prod and he goes down like a rock. So they stun him, and then here's where it just starts to get weird. Okay, so we're in Evil Central. You can tell it's Evil Central because they have a blood waterfall. Like, just blood waterfall. I don't know why. Maybe it's art. And Mr. Evil Dude, after they get Blade down with the little things, brings out his secret evil plan. And his secret evil plan is it's little vampires in a juice bag. He's got like a bunch of little vampires in little juice bags. They look like little vampire fetuses, Picture your regular fetus, big head, little arm, little leg, little leg. And then they're vampires, so they have little vampire teeth. And he's cloning them. See, cloning is evil. This is how we know he's evil. And he's cloning them so that like garlic doesn't hurt him and silver doesn't hurt him. And he's trying to figure out how to make it so light doesn't hurt him. That's why he needs Blade. So then they take Blade and they strap him to a cheese grater because they're going to suck all of his blood out of him. And apparently cheese graters are necessary for this. And then they do this really gross thing where they start to suck his blood out of him. And then Chris Christopherson kills an evil vampire. And along the way, that little snot-nosed kid that was with Blade, turns out he's a turncoat. He's actually been working for the vampires, and he tries to get Blade, and then Blade kills him. Because you got to kill snotty little kids. I mean, if there's one thing I've learned in my life, it's you got to kill snotty little kids. But so this, snotty little kid is dead, and now we learn about the little vampires and little juice cups, and now we're trying to get Blade's blood so we can get him. And then Chris Christopherson escapes, and then he kills an evil lawyer guy who's working for the vampires. That part didn't surprise me at all, a lawyer working for a vampire. And everyone saw it coming. I mean, even the movie knew it. They used some line about, I'm a vampire. I'm a vampire. Oh, I'm not a vampire. I'm a lawyer. So kill the evil lawyer guy who's taking the blood out of Blade. Then you get Blade up, and you're like, oh, Blade's almost dead because they sucked almost all of his blood out of him, so we got to save him. So what do we do to save him? Well, we drag him over and throw him in the big vat of blood, and then in the big vat of blood, after that happens, we have one of these stupid karate fights where, they got 60 people standing around all with stun guns who run at Blade one at a time so that he can kill them. You can actually see it. I mean, if you look carefully, you can see they've each got a little number, a little piece of paper with a number on it, and there's a little now attacking 7 off in the corner. Watch for it next time you see the movie. And then Blade kills all of them, and then he goes after, one of these evil vampires and kills him. He chops him in half with a big sword because with CGI you can do anything these days. I mean, it used to be hard to do impressive effects, so you only got the really good impressive effects in the big movies, and you only had a couple of them because they were hard and expensive, but now they do them all the time, so he chops them in half, and now Blade's got to go off, and he's got to kill the big evil vampire guy, because you got to kill the big evil vampire guy, otherwise, people are going to walk out of the movie going, that didn't make any sense, he didn't kill the big evil vampire guy. But so he races after him, and remember the girl I talked about? Well, she's fallen in love with Blade because he saved her life, even though she's evil and has been evil her whole life and has been fighting blah blah blah. I mean, it's so she and the head vampire guy are trying to escape, and then the head vampire guy, and then she double crosses him so that Blade can kill him, and again there's a big fight, and then the Reaver comes in and kills the chief vampire guy, who, by the way, Chief Vampire Guy is in fact the father of the Reaver, which is one of those weird things, good in like Hamlet, and when you use family relationships to advance the plot. Here it just seemed kind of stupid, because you're thinking, well, how did the big evil guy get a son that's a totally different species? I mean, I didn't pay a lot of attention in biology, but that's not supposed to happen. If that happens, you're doing something wrong. So the movie ends, after all the vampires are dead and Blade's okay and Chris Christopherson's okay and all the evil guys are dead. Because that's the way, movies like Blade are supposed to end. All the evil guys dead. So you get the idea this isn't a good movie. I mean, I've told you it's not a good movie, and there have been bunches of things along the way, but now, having told you it's not a good movie, I'm going to tell you what you can learn if you go see this movie. First thing to learn if you go see this movie is don't go see movies with the word Blade in the title if the title is followed by another number. Blade, all by itself, was not a bad movie. I mean, it wasn't a great movie, but if you went and saw it and the theater was full, they had some loud music, and they killed vampires in kind of artistic ways, but otherwise, it's probably worth $4 or $4.50. This movie, not worth $4.50. This movie, well, if someone invites you over to their house and says, I'd like to give you dinner, and then we could watch a movie afterwards, you should ask, is the movie going to be Blade 2? Because if it is, you want it to be like Lobster. Okay? Don't go over to someone's house if they're going to make you grilled cheese, and then you're going to have to watch Blade. Because in the cosmic trade-off, you're going to be behind, karmically speaking. Now, another thing, if you are a big evil guy in like Czechoslovakia or Romania, and you have a huge evil headquarters, and if you live in the center of the evil headquarters, surrounded, as I mentioned, by these stock vampire troops, invest in doors that close quickly. Just spend a little money to get the huge steel doors that can close, kind of like this speed. Okay? If you have huge steel doors that close like this, okay, then all your enemies have time to race across the room and get through the doors and kill you. Again, quickly closing doors, good idea. Other good ideas, just try to have a backup. If you're going to be a big evil guy, don't put a subfloor in your big evil guy building, because someone's just going to crawl through it and kill you. Your big evil building should be well lit. There should be no secret passages. And in general, don't fill it with blood, because it just looks cheesy. I mean, if maybe refrigerators filled with blood, maybe a nice Bloody Mary in a fridge, but huge fountains of blood, you just know that your enemy is going to be flung into them and revived, and will then be able to come back and take you and everyone you've ever spawned out, really. Which, I mean, come to think of it, now who's the vampire leader? I mean, there used to be a vampire leader. See, as I was walking out, I suddenly realized why it was set in Czechoslovakia. Because, this is Romania or somewhere. Because vampires are from Romania. So it makes sense that vampire headquarters would be from Romania. Kind of like, coffee's from Seattle, which is why Starbucks is from Seattle. I mean, well, okay, that's a bad example. But there are things where the headquarters is where they're from, and I'm sure you can think of one right now. But, oh, good Lord, don't go see this movie, is all I really want to say. It's been lovely seeing you all. I'm hoping that in the future we'll be able to talk about better movies. Now, I want to briefly talk about, there was one other movie that I went to go see. I was going to go see, there's this movie called E.T., and I kind of sat through the whole thing, and then I walked out and I thought, they're remaking everything. I mean, I remember when I was little, I saw this movie about this little alien came down to Earth and lived with a friend of his, and he wanted to phone home and get rescued. They remade it. I mean, why didn't they just re-release the original? That's what I want to know. I mean, because, this new one, the special effects weren't anywhere near as good as in the one I saw when I was a kid. And, this little alien didn't look at all real in this movie. But the one I saw, it was fabulous. I mean, it's really beginning to drain me. I don't know what this means. Keep going. Ooh. So what else can we talk about here on Keith Explains? I don't want to get the impression all I'm ever going to explain is movies. Because, well, movies are easy to explain because they really don't make any sense. So you can just make crap up about them. And then people will listen to you, and who knows? Maybe they'll even give you a TV show. But you can explain other things. I mean, I'm looking at the wall. I think I have about a minute and a half. No, I have 15 seconds. I have no time at all, do I? So this was just messing around with Keith's mind, wasn't it? This was just let's try to get Keith to get all the way up to the end so he has to rush before he says, well, come watch the next episode of Keith Explains. I'll talk about something else. I don't know what it'll be, because I really don't decide until about 2 days before we actually tape this thing. Good night, everyone.